Hey y'all, happy Monday. Thank you for jumping on. Like I said earlier, or what was posted on our Facebook page is that we were going to jump on. I was going to jump on and I was going to give you some corrections to the video we did last week about the State Ethics Commission ruling and ordering the board members to give back some illegal campaign contributions. Here's why. So my favorite quote is by Maya Angelou when she said, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing, when you know better, do better. And that's what accountability is all about. And so we hold ourselves to the same standard that we hold our elected officials to. So a few things I said last week were accurate. And now that more information has come out about the ruling, we want to correct the record. Before we do that, we also want to explain to you, now that we know more about and we understand better about the ethics committee, some of the questions that we posed in that video, we now have answers to. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to read a lot of this because I want to make sure I get it right. And I want you to know that a lot of this information comes from an article that the Marietta Daily Journal posted today. It's a fairly good article. It gives some good background information. It doesn't go deep enough by any means, but we certainly appreciate the article. So the core issue is the same. Okay. Last week when I told you what the core issue was, that remains unchanged and it's actually supported by what the commission, came out with. Here's the bottom line. Remember I said this. I said it differently than what I'm going to say it now, but here's the bottom line. Scamahorn, I want you to think about this. Scamahorn and Wheeler voted to award multi-million-dollar no-bid contracts and in return received illegal campaign contributions from the people who benefited from those contracts. That apparently is not illegal, but that is what happened. Okay, so here, this is big, y'all. When I'm about ready to tell you, this is big. So the commissioners actually agreed with the complainants. Okay, so the complaint was that that Freeman Mathis and the two PACs were operating as one. The commission agreed with that. So the State Ethics Commission agreed with the complainant that Freeman Mathis and Gary, Cobb Children First, and business supporting schools were all affiliated and operating as the same donor. Therefore, when those three entities gave the maximum amount of donations to John Christodoro, Randy Scamahorn, Brad Wheeler, the three Republicans that were running for office, those contributions combined made up an illegal amount of money because it was above the max capacity allowed by law. The commission found that Cobb Children First and business supporting schools violated campaign finance law, and each entity was fined $5,000. Now, what we're not going to get into is how those two PACs were formed, and which is problematic, okay, in and of itself. But that was all part of the investigation. Okay, the complaints against Freeman Mathis and Gary and Jonathan Crumley were dismissed because once Cobb Children First and the business supporting schools PACs took responsibility for the violations and agreed to pay the $5,000 fine times two, or a piece, the commission said Freeman Mathis and Gary's contributions fell within legal limits when they were considered a loan. The PACs, which have been dissolved, have to pay the fee, the fine or whatever, have to remit the money back to the state. But Freeman Mathis and Jonathan Crumley don't. So Crumley's attorney, Brian Tyson, a name that I mentioned last week, successfully argued that Crumley was just an employee and registered agent with no personal liability. So that happened. Also, the commission dismissed all complaints against the three board members, claiming that there wasn't enough evidence to prove that they knew or should have known the contributions exceeded legal limits. We're going to talk about that at the end in my hot take section. But they were still ordered to return the money. Now, here's where I need to correct the record. Okay, I said the wrong total amounts. I said the right amounts, but let me explain. Brad Wheeler received $13,200 over the limit. Okay, I reported out all of the donations, but remember or contributions, but remember I just said the commission is allowing them to keep what they got from Freeman Mathis. And don't forget, Freeman Mathis, they're the guys who got almost $2 million of taxpayer dollars that they voted for. So Wheeler Scamhorn got $13,200 over the legal limit. Wheeler is only paying back $5,000 because his campaign account is broke. Scamahorn is paying back the full amount of $13,200. And Crisadora received $6,600 over the amount, the illegal amount, or over the legal amount, and is paying back the full amount. I just want to make sure that we are clear on that. They are being allowed to keep the money that Freeman Mathis gave them, okay? But they have to pay back everything else except for Brad Wheeler. For some reason, because he's broke, he doesn't have to pay back what he got. He only has to pay back what he can afford. I'm sure everybody has learned their lessons. Also, I was wrong when I said that. I said it backwards, okay? So I said that Wheeler's illegal contributions made up 40% of his of the total contributions. I was wrong about that. That was Scamahorn. So to be clear, Randy Scamahorn's illegal contributions made up 40% of his entire campaign funds, while Brad Wheeler's illegal contributions made up 25% of his campaign funds. Just listen. We pride ourselves on being factual and being right, and when we find out that we weren't those things, we pride ourselves in being, responsible enough to say so and to set the record straight. However, I will say this. These are not candidates who have not run before. Okay, when I'm saying that, I'm talking about Scamahorn and Wheeler. These are chronic campaign candidates who absolutely should have understood what the maximum campaign contributions are. And I get it. Campaign law is tricky, but I personally know a lot of candidates who have never had any citations against them. So tricky, but not impossible to follow the rules. Now, in the MDJ today, Scamahorn was quoted, because, he loves to talk to the media. And he said, well, we didn't know that these organizations weren't legit. And I'm here to tell you that when large contributions come in on the same day, if you aren't even curious about where they're coming from, I understand. I just assumed that candidates have the obligation to make sure that all their contributions are legit. My bad. My bad for thinking that they have to do their own due diligence. Apparently they don't. So that's disappointing, but not at all surprising. And also, like I said, why does Wheeler only have to pay back what he can afford? I mean, the contributions were, and by the way, the donors are actually paying that back. All right, here's something that I really want to express to you. This is part of the hot takes part. We're going to go through this, and then I'm going to bounce off. I'm trying to make this not a 20-minute video, but this is super important. So go back to what the commission said. The commission said, well, there's no evidence that they knew or should have known. And Scamahorn himself said, well, we didn't know. And listen, I find that to be ironic. I find that to be really rich, that they want us to extend them some grace on, well, we didn't know any better. Because I maintain they should have known better, but not just that. But here's what I want you to know. So remember we talked about, there was a student, it was just recently in the news. There was an autistic student who right after the Appalachia school shootings, he used his school computer and he sent a message to his friends at his old school saying he had heard that there was a school shooting threat to that school. Do you remember that? And do you remember that he was expelled for that? And real recently, this is the part that's been in the news. Real recently in the news, the judge overturned that expulsion. Okay, now this was a student with autism who really did not know. Really legitimately did not know. And that what he was doing was wrong. And I maintain should not have been considered that anyway. And a judge even overturned that expulsion. However, the district just filed a motion to appeal the judge's ruling. Okay, did you hear what I just said? So we have grown people, adults, school board members who are saying, well, we didn't know we did anything wrong and want us to extend them some grace, the same grace that they are not willing to extend our students. And by the way, this is going to be another thing that costs taxpayers money, because every time they file a motion, it requires whatever, legal intervention, which costs us money. So I just find that to be really distasteful, that they want the same kind of grace that they aren't willing to extend to our students. Especially when a judge says that they should. Randy Scamahorn also told the MDJ, those that are on Facebook, that's me, and other media are distorting the facts and marching to their own agenda. Well, Randy, here's a fact. If by agenda you mean wanting our school board members to run their 5- and 6-figure campaign accounts and their personal businesses with integrity and without controversy or illegal activities, well then yes, guilty. You want to call that an agenda? Call that an agenda. I call that accountability and common sense. He also said, again, they had no way of knowing that these were not legitimate organizations, but these were organizations that were created on the same day and then made those large contributions on the same day. I mean, how legitimate does that sound to you? And also, so let me get this straight. Freeman Mathis Gary did something wrong. Remember, the commission said there's not any daylight between them and the two PACs, but they get to walk away without being held accountable. I find that very interesting. And I think, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, those PACs have actually also been dissolved. Isn't that convenient? They were there to serve one purpose and one purpose only. So like I said, everyone's illegal activities have been rewarded because there's not a lot of consequences that have come to them. And like I said, I'm sure they've all learned their lesson on how crime doesn't pay, right? I'm sure of it. And here's the bottom line, and nobody is disputing this, and I'm going to say this again, because even if those contributions, even if taking contributions from people that you have voted to give millions of dollars to isn't illegal, is it ethical? Okay, so votes were cast. I'm just going to say this. Votes were cast to spend money that could have benefited our kids and our teachers, but instead went to companies who then illegally funneled money into the campaigns of Randy Scamahorn, Brad Wheeler, John Cristodoro. Brad Wheeler and Scamahorn are the ones who actually voted on those contracts. As you know, John Cristodoro was not yet on the board, but he was the other Republican up for re-election. So listen, I hope that provides some clarity. I hope that I've done a good job of correcting the record. They can call it an agenda all they want. Like I said, we call it accountability, okay? And thousands of you agree with us. Thousands of you support us, which we appreciate. As always, you know what we always say. We are going to keep doing this work because it is important and because we are watching the fun. So, yeah, that's it, y'all. That's what we're going to do. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll be back. Don't forget, there's a school board meeting this week, so you know what that means. We'll be back.